Although the pandemic has no doubt changed how the world views work, COVID-19 and work from home is actually just one more reframing of a conversation on work that started more than a decade ago. What does it mean to be an employee? How do we define what our workplaces should be? How much should employers weigh in on social issues? How do we truly address income inequality, discrimination at work, or diversity? When we talk about the future of work, one name that's often mentioned is Uber. So who better to talk to about these topics than Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi? I sat down with Dara recently at the company headquarters in San Francisco for a candid and unique conversation on how they view work and the role of business in shaping people's lives. Dara, the role of the CEO has changed immensely over the years, since your days at Expedia. You've gone from a period where you were focused on corporate strategy, shareholder return, managing capital, to now there's a much larger focus on culture. How do you think about the way a CEO's role has changed, and how does that play a role in the way you manage at Uber?
So you're right, which is the role of a CEO, and I'd say senior management at any company, it has gone a lot more complex. And it has, moved from what I would call two dimensions: shareholder return, strategy, management team, but now to a third dimension, which is our place in society, our effect on stakeholders. And I think kind of the olden ways, which is we are purely economic animals, I think certainly served companies well and the stock market well as far as maximizing shareholder returns, but those gains weren't necessarily shared equally or equitably. I think the awareness of that issue and then the actions that we're taking in terms of ESG and the definition of governance. We want to grow profitably, but we want to grow sustainably. We want to grow in a way that is environmentally friendly. We want to grow in a way that is fair to societies.
As you cut through all those layers, how do you then think about Uber's overall purpose and mission as it relates to employees and customers at a high level?
For us, our mission is, it's all about reimagining the way that the world moves for the better, right? And when you think about it, like Uber's experimented in a lot of areas, but the thing that we always come back to is movement. It's movement of people and food and groceries, and alcohol and like pallets of water bottles with Uber Freight, and whether it's on 2 wheels or 3 wheels or 4 wheels or 18 wheels, hopefully electric, whether it's driven by a human being or a robot, et cetera. Our core mission is one of movement, and we think movement is actually fundamental to life. And so we actually think that, we serve our communities through this value of movement, making it more available, making it more affordable, making sure that it's available in every single community, not just at the center of a city. Now, at the end of that mission, we always say for the better. Our definition of for the better makes sure that we are making the kinds of forward investments. For us, in particular, our commitment to be all electric by 2030 in the US, Canada, and Europe, being neutral by 2040 all around the world, that then goes to make sure that our core mission of reimagining movement is always for the better.
Uber's been very involved with the communities on a lot of topics, including a lot of high-profile, highly politicized topics. We think about Black Lives Matter, voting rights, health privacy, et cetera. How do you choose which issues to get involved with, and how do you think about managing through potential outcomes as you talk through the issues?
The first thought that we have isn't about repercussions. I honestly think that some of these issues are only controversial if discussed in a soundbite or a tweet versus fully fleshed out. So for us, Black Lives Matter was something that mattered to us as a company, it mattered to us as individuals, but it also matters to the service and matters to the hundreds of thousands of Black drivers that we have on the platform as well. That's not why we did it, because it was always the right thing to do. So I think that there are some core issues: sustainability, safety, equity, anti-racism. These are all issues that go to the core of who we are and our identity. So we take action on those and we lead, but we lead because it overlaps with our purpose.
Given Uber's position and business model, you're an active part of the discussion on how we think about the future of work. So I'd be curious to hear about your perspective of how does Uber think about the future of work and what it means for the potential for earners on the platform?
As we come back from the pandemic, the way we work is going to fundamentally change. And what we've always been about is flexibility. And that's the beauty about our platform and other similar platforms, is that we allow drivers, we allow couriers to essentially work when they want to. We allow them to work where they want to, but we are also supportive of complementing that with benefits that have historically only been associated with full-time work, but we think flexibility and benefits can live together, and we think that's ultimately where the future of work is going.
That flexibility sometimes can cause some fluctuation in earnings power for drivers. Do you think that Uber has a responsibility to guarantee some minimum level of compensation for their drivers?
So I think that Uber has the responsibility to provide a fair and equitable platform to drivers to earn on. And earnings can fluctuate based on where you work, when you work, et cetera. As long as our interests are aligned and as long as we are transparent with earners as to what they can expect to earn and what the best way to earn is, I think we're fulfilling our mission, so to speak.
I want to pivot a little bit to Uber Eats. During the pandemic, Uber Eats really grew into an incredible business for Uber. It's a fascinating dynamic because on one hand, Uber Eats almost became somewhat of a lifeline for a lot of restaurants and small, medium-sized businesses during shelter in. But on the other hand, you have some businesses saying it's difficult to make any profit if I'm selling my food through third-party delivery platforms. We now have various regulatory structures. We have fee caps in a handful of cities. I'd be curious to hear about, one, just your perspective about what's happened to date, and how do you think about Uber's relationship with SMBs and restaurants as time goes on?
Well, I think SMBs and restaurants in general, grocery stores, et cetera, they're an incredibly important part of the success of our platform. And if they don't succeed, we don't succeed as a company. The commission that we charge restaurants isn't just, let's say, for marketing, but it also covers, in many circumstances, the cost of the courier delivery, the courier taking food from point A to B, and that is part of the value that we bring restaurants. And I do think that ultimately the restaurants who succeed in this post-pandemic world are going to treat delivery as a core part of their business. And if you view delivery and partnerships with us or other marketplace players as a core part of your business, then you can start optimizing your business against delivery. But for the restaurant industry as a whole, I think that Eats and other players in our category can be a huge, huge growth driver for the next 5 to 10 years.
I want to talk about negative externalities on the platform, on platform discrimination, and just other negative effects that can happen. How do you think about Uber's responsibility to sort of police, monitor, and just prevent negative externalities that can happen on the platform?
Yeah, I think this is a super important issue for platform companies, technology companies generally. The platform absolutely has a responsibility to police itself and to police the communities in which it serves. For us, it started with safety. It's saying that when we have earners join the platform, when we have riders join the platform, we want to make sure that they're safe. You see it, for example, even within the pandemic, using our selfie technology to make sure that you have a mask on. We were leading in that, and it was because we were standing for safety and we were taking responsibility on our platform. In the same way, I would say as it relates to our anti-racism commitments. Anti-racism is an incredibly important part of that community guidelines. And now we're moving one step further, which is making sure that our researchers, for example, make certain that the algorithms that we are building as far as matching riders and drivers and eaters and restaurants aren't accidentally biased in one way or the other. Hiring a leader of inclusive design to make sure that our products speak to all of our communities. We can't control everything, but when we get signal, it's up to us to act, and shame on us if we don't.
On the safety point, you have made a lot of strides here. Your 2020 U.S. safety report shows that 99.9% of Uber trips don't have any safety-related incidents at all. A few questions here. One, what steps have you taken to really achieve this already high level of safety? Two, where do you sort of still see areas of low-hanging fruit or areas for improvement on the safety front? And three, when you sit down and say, this is my North Star on the safety report, where do you see that heading the next couple of years?
My view is if there's a sexual assault on Uber, that's one too many sexual assaults, right? So I think internally, we have to push as a company to say that good isn't good enough. Great isn't good enough. But I am really proud of the work, and our Standing for Safety, was a super important initiative that we pushed forward. It's actually now part of the company core values. It actually went from an initiative to like how we operate as a company. And for us, it really began with measuring ourselves. So we measure safety incidents on the platform. We work with community leaders to classify the various incidents. I think I'd say the one area where I would point out we do need to make more progress now actually relates to our newer business, which is Uber Eats and courier safety.
Uber is committed to a fully electric rides platform in the US, Canada, and Europe by 2030. And by 2040, a net zero carbon emission mandate across rides, eats, freight, and even the corporate side of the business. For someone who says, hey, 2040, that's 20 years away. Why is it going to take so long, Dara? How do you respond to that?
It does feel like it's a long time away. At the same time, I would tell you with the team, we're working very, very quickly to drive our sustainability commitments. The most important factor that we're working on right now is that moving from combustion engines, let's say to hybrids, to fully electric for drivers is not yet economically viable. So we've committed $800 million to help drive that flywheel from working with car manufacturers to make sure that we secure discounts for EVs, and also making sure that their plans for developing EVs isn't just for the high end, but it's for more affordable EVs as well. We're working with cities in terms of charging infrastructure to make sure that charging infrastructure isn't just in the center of cities where the more wealthy live, but also is in the outskirts of the cities so that infrastructure is available to everybody. We've introduced Uber Green and are expanding Uber Green all over the world to make sure that our riders are aware of green choices. So it's a long way away, but we got to start now.
Yeah.
And I'm really confident that we'll get there by 2040.
It takes a long time to get all the math to work.
It does. And, a car is a fixed asset, and the useful life of a car is measured in years. So in order to get that fleet to turn over, and to, again, turn over in a way that economically makes sense for our earners, is something that we have to get started on now.
Great. Dara, thank you for taking the time to talk through all these complicated topics. We really appreciate the conversation.
Happy to do it. Thank you very much for having me.